Welcome to Citizen Matters panel discussion on election 2021 What Chennai Wants. The political climate in Tamil Nadu is tense as the state will go for assembly polls in less than 3 weeks from now. In several ways, the 2021 assembly elections will be a game changer in Tamil Nadu. The absence of two Dravidian icons, M. Karunanidhi and J Jayalalithaa, and the entrance of Makkal Needhi Maiam led by Kamal Hassan has redefined Tamil Nadu politics in many ways. DMK and AIADMK are contending with each other by announcing populist welfare schemes, free housing, and job opportunities. On the flip side, Chennai grapples with complex problems such as environmental issues, civic infrastructure, education system, and women's safety. Where does Chennai stand in these aspects? What are the challenges in the key areas? What do Chennaites want from the new government? This is what we propose to explore over the 60 minutes. In today's panel, we have Karthik, volunteer with Chennai Climate Action Group, Jyoti Lakshmi Sundaresan, an advocate practicing at Madras High Court, Chennai, Chennai coordinator for Shakti and Voice of People, Prashant Gautam, volunteer with Araporiyakam, Merlia Shaukat, founder and CEO of Madhi Foundation, Harsha Koda, co-founder of the Federation of OMR Residents Association, Raghuraman, co-founder and honorary secretary of Karma Vidya Foundation for the Visually Impaired. Before we begin, some housekeeping rules. All panelists to keep their video on throughout and to unmute only when speaking. All panelists can rename their name with full name and organization. All participants to keep their video and mic off. All participants can share their thoughts and question in chat box. So firstly, the panelists will take a few minutes to make the opening remarks. So I would like to start with, this question is directed to all panelists, and let's start with Karthik. Karthik, tell us about some of the key challenges that you see around you in your domain of work that you would like the new government to address. And can you also elaborate on the level of involvement of the present and past governments that you've seen so far?
Hi all, thank you for the opportunity to speak. So firstly, we are in a forum discussing about issues that Chennai is facing and the problems Chennai is facing. Chennai itself is a problem when it comes to environmental issues. So let us all, as we discuss our own problems, let us keep in mind that we are also one of the biggest problem when it comes to environmental issues, especially because of our consumption levels. So to begin with, for me, Chennai includes the northern part of Chennai, which includes Ennur, Manali, and Thiruvattiur area as well. So I will start from there. So northern part of Chennai is one of the most industrialized places in the country. I would say there are some 34 red category industries, all situated in one area, 2 mega thermal power plants, three ports, a lot of heavy vehicular movements. Very big, maybe the largest, second largest or something, dump yard in Kodingur and other things. So the life quality in this area has been pathetically low in terms of air pollution, water pollution, and other health issues. So one of the key things that the government has to address is to address the issues in this area. So we as Chennai Climate Action Group we are actively involved in multiple campaigns in this area. Recently, we did a report on the stack emission, that's a chimney emission of at least 6 industries in that area. And we found that 60% of the time, they were violating the norms. Also, with the existing problem in place, there is a proposal by Adani for a very large expansion of Kattupalli port, which will affect the Pulicat area and which will drastically affect Chennai as well. It's not only about that area, it will affect residents of Chennai, both in terms of availability of water and the risk of flooding. So one of the main concerns is that we have been constantly raising this with multiple political parties, and they have also responded, about which we may be talking later. Another set of issues, important issues for Chennai when we consider is in terms of water. So this is a cycle that we follow. We'll have a flood in one year, and the following year we'll have a drought with water shortage. So it's a complicated situation to solve. it is not very easy. Development or whatever urbanization has creeped in so much that it is kind of difficult to solve. But then the solutions are available. To put in numbers, the government claims, not us. The government claims that there are 4,100 water bodies around in and around Chennai, and then the whole overall capacity of those water bodies will be 100 TMC. And the need of Chennai itself for a year is around 12 to 15 TMC only. Organizing or maintaining this water body, according to government claim itself, organizing and maintaining this water bodies itself should be able to sustain us for a very long time. It's a simple math. 15 TMC per year, we have capacity of 100 TMC, which is replenished every year. Then how could we have such water shortage in 2019, where some data shows that only water tankers were distributing around 350 million liters per day. That is like more than 30 to 40% of the total requirement of water in Chennai. So this is one of the other major concerns of Chennai. And on the contrary, the solutions being suggested for this are also mostly false solutioning and not the right way to approach things. When there are others, when there are experts as Janak Rajan and others talking about various solutions, the government is constantly taking up solutions which are not sustainable and not worthy, like developing more desalination plants, which is both ecologically not sustainable and also degrading the lifestyle of livelihood of farmers, and other disastrous plans. Like, for example, there was a proposal for dredging Pallikarnai marshland, which was not supported by many of the people, and many of the experts and CARE Trust run a campaign to prevent that. So the solutioning also in terms of increasing the water capacity has not been in the right way, and in a way that we spend crores of money and then we end up continuing with the same state of this thing. So in terms of flooding, we are obviously known that even a small flood now, small rain leads to flooding of roads and households. Stormwater, the government claims that they have built stormwater drains for spending thousands of crores with World Bank projects, but then still water gets stagnated in the roads. The rule says that whenever there's a road being built, that should scrap the previous road and then build, but then that's not followed. So roads are built on one over the other, and over a period of time, all the houses go into the low-lying area. So there are multiple such problems which are leading to flooding issues in the city. Then if we come to air pollution issues, the biggest concern is there's not enough money. Only 3 central stations are available, and then there's a need for more such stations. And we as CCAG, we do multiple reports. One of the reports that we do is we put up portable air monitoring stations in multiple areas and then check the air quality of the city. So one thing that we found in 2019, this year's project is, or reporting is still going on, but then one thing that we found in 2019 was we placed the air monitors in 15 locations, and then all 15 locations where the air quality was beyond the standards that is prescribed in the country. And others, in terms of legislation, there's no proper legislation for tree protection of trees in Tamil Nadu. For now, any tree that's been removed can be booked only under destruction of damaging of public property. There's no Tree Act. For example, one of our counterparts, that's Mumbai, has one of the leading campaigns is an Save RA campaign, in which they protected the forest and right in center of Mumbai. One thing that helped them do was to have a concrete Tree Act and a tree authority, which helped the citizens movement drastically. Various organizations like Nilal and others in Tamil Nadu and Chennai have been advocating for this Tree Act or protection of trees, some kind of legislation for protection of trees. It has not been heeded by the government yet. Then if you see solid waste management again comes up with as an important issue. If you have crossed through the Pallikarnai marshland, you will see Perungudi dump yard, and then if you've gone to the northern part of Chennai, there's Kodangur dump yard. Both these dump yards have been filling, and we have not taken enough actions to reduce the waste or to improve the waste management. But then the solution again goes into false solutioning, like incineration is a solution that's been proposed, and 7 incinerating centers are going to be set up across Chennai, which again is a major concern in terms of health and environmental issues. So generally, whatever problem is there, there's a fall solutioning that keeps happening, which is both expensive as well as not suitable or not sustainable over a long period of time. Then we talk about this single-use plastic ban, which was introduced by government in 2019, and then now we don't see even a traces of it being implemented right now. We understand COVID is tough times, but then once the COVID is gone, let's hope that it gets back to the stringent way it should have been. In terms of water contamination, we see that the rivers in Tamil Nadu, in Chennai, all the 3 important rivers are polluted drastically. There has been various reports. In 2019, there was a report by the central government saying that Chennai is one of the most drinking water quality in Chennai is one of the worst, with them taking 10 samples on all 10 samples being not suitable for drinking. Recently, there was Anna University. There was a report on having microplastics in reservoirs of Red Hills. So all these kinds of problems is what we are facing constantly in Chennai. And as I told again, Chennai, we are facing these problems in Chennai, and Chennai itself is a problem for a lot more things. And if we take the context of Tamil Nadu, the situation is even worse.
Thank you, Karthik. Thank you for explaining the various environmental concerns that Chennai is facing. So can we have Prashant Gautam speak on urban governance in Chennai, sir?
Yeah, sure, Bhavani. Yeah. Am I audible now? Am I audible?
Yes, yes.
Voice okay?
Yes, yes.
Okay. So, as you specifically spoke about local bodies, so I'll just touch upon that and give you a top 5 of what I want to see, the new government be doing, right? So the first one is, obviously the underground sewerage and water supply to the entire city, right? So that's the top 1 priority for me. If you take areas like OMR, which are so developed and so IT focused and everything, they still don't have even the basic facilities like underground sewerage and piped water supply. Number 2 is the sewage treatment plants, right? We need to ramp up infrastructure to make sure that the sewage is being treated properly, and they need to be released only after ensuring complete treatment of the sewage water. Stop all kind of water bodies from getting polluted with the sewage water. That is in fact connected to this. And then as Karthik already mentioned, garbage dumping without any processing, right? There needs to be proper segregation. Enforcement of segregation is important. People need to be paying attention to this, and if people don't comply, they need to be penalized, right? This needs to be taken up very seriously. You can't look at this as a vote bank politics anymore. It cannot be vote bank politics, right? So it needs to be treated very, very harshly. So that's one thing. And there needs to be a thrust on e-governance. That's the 4th point, right? So there needs to be a massive thrust on e-governance. There needs to be, you need to eliminate all kinds of, people contact with the public, the public contact with the government officials. They don't need to come to the government offices for every small thing, right? So they need to be able to get their work done. So that is 4th number. And the final thing is very close to my heart. I have a very important thing, which is traffic violations, right? Traffic signals itself. Just take traffic signals and cop policing on the roads. That is not being done. It needs to be enforced no matter what. This is very important, because when you step out of your house, you're going to land on the road. And if you're not disciplined on the road, you need to be penalized for that. So this needs to be properly enforced, and proper police presence on the roads is also important for this. And then so the local bodies part. Local bodies, what I need is ward committees and area sabhas, which have been spoken about, and the bill passed modified in 2010, right? The amendments were brought about in end of 2010. And even now, 10 years have passed, and still we don't see what committees and area sabhas being formed until today. This is a very, very serious violation. The government needs to come out of this mode. Whichever government is forming now, they need to be focusing on devolving, more powers to the public, right? So this is what every government is trying to resist at this point of time, because this makes them less important in my own theory. I think they feel probably the parties might lose power if you are going to get public into the decision making, right? As I've spoken last week as well, right? So there are many projects which are being done through special officers, where these projects are not even required at this point of time. The AIADMK government has not even done any kind of due diligence on what is required for a particular constituency, and they're just using the special officers to do projects at random pace. So the KFW bank loan that they took to do the ECR stormwater drain project is also one which can be told is part of it, right? And there are many footpath laying projects which are going on even in Kotrapuram, where everything was fine. The water was not stagnating, nothing was happening, and there were many issues like this, right? There are many projects which I can point out like this. So that is something very, very important, and they need to be getting the local bodies, the ward committees and area sabhas in place, so that the MLAs need to push for these regulations to come inside and enforce this, right? The amendments are there, but we need to make sure that these are passed. That's what I had in mind. If there is another round, I can talk about the key regulations as well. Yeah, over to you, Bhavani.
Those points are all articles waiting to be done. Thanks a lot, Prashant. Now
Okay,
let's
thank
ask Jyoti about the key issues faced by women in Chennai. Yeah, over to you.
Good evening, one and all. So, as someone who was born and growing up in Chennai, I still remember the 90s cases like the Savika Shah cases, the custodial rape cases that has been widely discussed. And we think once women get properly educated and earns their own income, financially and emotionally independent, these problems are prone to be addressed. But we still see the murders happening in a very open space like railway stations over very minor issues. And we still face the domestic violence happening at homes. There are reports like about 80% of the cases happens in the family environment for something against women. And the public space, as a person who are educated and aspire to interact with the society, engage with the society, when I come out of the home, the public space is completely unsafe. And the digital space is even more worse, that is causing a lot of concern. So I feel the challenges exist, as an individual we have addressed. We are all educated, we are all earning our own income. But when we interact as an institution, when we engage with the society, women's space are not respected and it is not recognized. So that is the key challenge. How are we going to convert the individual empowerment into an institutionally empowered society? So that is going to be the major challenge I face. And as I said, we still face a lot of sexual abuses happening in the workspace that are not addressed. We have a n number of legislations, n number of agencies to ensure that the legislations are properly implemented, and n number of one-stop stations that is there throughout the nation. But we don't see it working. As a women, we don't see anything working. So why is the major question we should explore on?
Okay, you made an important point on the usage of Nirbhaya funds, Jyoti Lakshmi, under which the one-stop centers are implemented all over India. Thank you for that. Now, let's move to Raghuraman to speak about the challenges faced by persons with disabilities.
Thank you, madam. And of course, I am here to share the cup of a cup with everyone. But the real point is from a disability point of view perspective, all the points that are told are being accessed or being navigated in a different plane or in a different style. So our way of living is altogether in a different pattern. And that is why I really thank this forum for allowing a person with disability to represent for the community. And here are my thoughts on the challenges that we meet on the day-to-day living. So first and foremost, especially when it comes to Chennai, though Chennai being a metropolitan and even in terms of a cosmopolitan city, we really are really faced with the numbers, how many people are here. See, because every scheme, every program that is carried out by the corporation, by the district, will always go with some data. So there is no data at all properly maintained by the government, by the department in the district and also in the corporation. So that is the first key I want to highlight upon. And there are 21 persons with disabilities being highlighted or being acknowledged or recognized in the latest 2016 RPD Act, Rights for Persons with Disability Act. So in that way, this 21 disabilities, if you go on to the 2011 census, it will be a different number because there are only 7 disabilities being mentioned. Now it is all totally a different scenario where we have 21 types of disabilities. That is the key. So data is unavailable, point one. Point two, when we go to get some certificates, I mean, even one of our friends talked about e-governance and digitalization and so on. When we go and try to get some certificates, it could be a birth certificate or a death certificate or any other thing, it is a humongous task for us to reach out to the officials, reach out to the right person, and accessing the right person and the right thing itself is a difficulty. We are not sure what is being really done because we are always told that you come some other day. That is the only answer that we always get, or otherwise we'll be either neglected or isolated somewhere or the other. The third important point is the medical support. Many types of disabilities, for example, the multiple sclerosis or a person with autism and others require weekly and timely support, medical support, which is really lacking. And when we go into a private sector, a private office, a pharmacy, it really costs us a lot. And we really even cannot access them because they are not reachable at our locale. So we need to anyway access whatever comes to our doorstep. So in that way, I mean, this Chennai corporation should take up such initiatives on that. Medical support is the key, right? Because during COVID, we all suffered this, and we were not able to. Some of our even close friends were not able to even get their injections and medicines on time. That is the third point. The fourth one is essentially on the safety of women and the empowerment of women. Women with the disabilities or the vulnerable, more marginalized within the disability themselves, within the disability group themselves, because they are not given, they are basically they are malnutrition and the ignorance and neglect from family. All these add up to the women, and they when they come out for work, some work as a trader on the streets, as a trader on the station, railway stations, or in a private firm, or even government office. Very few in the government office. They really face sexual disturbances and harassments and so on, which were even not even acknowledged or rather even recognized because of their disability. It is not being taken much attention to. That is the fourth important thing. Fifth is more importantly, when you go with digitalization, I would humbly request whatever being done on the digital forum should be made fully accessible. There are guidelines. The Indian government has brought in guidelines. The International Forum has a universal guideline. And there are many guidelines on both the digital and the physical platforms. But it is none of them are being followed. So that is to be taken care. Because when we go, as you go and apply online, right? Certain things, certain websites or most of the websites you can take up. There is a court cases also. The court also has acknowledged that more than 80% of the websites of the government of India and as well the government of Tamil Nadu are not accessible. So still the cases are in pending in the courts. And so accessibility is the key. So digitalization should always go with accessibility, and accessibility should be for all persons with disabilities. Right, that is the fifth one. The sixth one on the importance of learning, e-learning. When we go with, because e-learning is the key now. People in the days to come, there's the national education policy being implemented slowly, gradually coming up, and so when persons with disability also need to cope with, the district should ensure that there are educational institutions are also imposing on this. Right, we need to go online and do things. So these e-learning should also be made accessible. And last but not the least, the physical access. Right, when I say physical access, our friend talked about the urban structures and so on. Right, when we step out of our house, the roads, either they are so much high, because when they want to lay a road, they either make it a little higher or it is much lower. Right, and there are here and there pits and manholes opened, and there are barriers like poles here and there, even in the payments, even on the payments. For example, in the commissioners or police commissioner office payment, or take for example SIET platform payment there, college SIET college platform, or even at several other places, because I have been also audited these places. Access audit were done. I was also a part of that. But still, even in T Nagar, Pondy Bazaar, right? They made a big show, but still, it is not totally really accessible in terms of the day-to-day access for a person with disability. So physical access, and even commuting, when you go to a bus stop, like where you stand and what bus is coming, or what is the vehicle that comes in front of you, right? Or where do we really travel, in the sense when you travel by a bus, on your way, there should be some instructions given, right? So all these are all lacking. And in the signal, they have a common sound announcement. The sound announcement is something very rubbish, totally of no use, because you can hear a sound at anywhere you stand, and in that particular location. Right? You can stand at even at 100 feet away, and you can even still listen to the same sound. The sound speaker will be in a different direction. The signal pole will be in a different location, and the pathway will be in a different location. So how could you expect a person with, especially with the visual impact, to walk over? So these are all navigational hindrances, and a barrier-free environment is absolutely nil, right? And even if it is the case with the summer season, the worst is with the rainy season, right? So so think about the access itself. So livelihood is totally halted because of all these things. So these are all some points. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree, sir. I have noticed it too. It is unfortunate that the fraternity is facing so much issues despite continuously fighting for rights. So I agree, sir. I agree with your points. Next, can we have Merlia speak about the status of public education system in Chennai?
Hi, thank you so much. It's been truly fascinating listening to so many of you, and I'm slightly saddened by the fact that we're all in the same city, and I've never met before, despite being so passionate about bringing about change in the city that I'm assuming all of us love. Um, so I'd love to meet all of you at some point and put our heads together. So of all the things that were discussed, I think education or public education or government school education is probably the one thing that affects. I'm making a huge generalization here, but affects all of us here, the so-called elite, urban, middle class, the least. So given that we do not have a stake in it, I think the apathy shows, right? I mean, how many of us really I guess know what is going on in our local corporation schools, right? How many of us want to send our children there? How many of us have, possible that this group has in some way or form, but I'm talking about the large citizen uh, apathy that typically is seen. Everybody wants to go and volunteer for a few hours in corporation schools every now and then, and do a bit of CSR every now and then. But to revive public education as a viable option for our children, for my son or for your grandchildren or your children, is not something that occurs to us. My parents went to a government school. Some people in my generation also went to government schools. But when you look at it now, the kind of class segregation that you see in schooling is just appalling. There is a very, very clear distinction about where the economically underprivileged will go, and even if you're slightly slightly upwardly mobile, slightly belong to a slightly higher economic class, private school is almost a no-brainer. And that is not a sign of a city that wants to make education a right. Today, quality education has become a privilege, and we seem to have made peace with it for some reason. Education also, I think, is a very centralized subject, right? A lot of mandate comes from the state headquarters. So the Chennai Corporation, in that sense, has very little say on the kind of curriculum or teacher training or pedagogy or whatever goes on in the corporation schools. So in that sense, expecting Chennai Corporation to bring about qualitative change to the classroom is a little far-fetched, because they sort of have to toe the line. We work with the state education department, so we're in that sense we are looking at quality from the state lens. But I think that said, there is no excuse for what happens at the Chennai Corporation level, which is an absolute lack of clarity, direction, and vision for what it wants to achieve in its public schools. Well, what is your 5-year plan for your corporation schools? Put it out in the public domain. You have CSRs who compete with each other, who fall over each other to come and give you money. And you cannot think beyond smart classrooms. You cannot think beyond computer classrooms. You cannot think beyond, some of the things that are absolutely unnecessary. I mean, fix the basic problems first, right? And I'm not even talking about infrastructure. You could have a very simple looking school, but what goes inside it is what matters, right? And somehow, from a priority point of view, as a city and as an ecosystem, we cannot think beyond smart classrooms and 10th standard and 12th standard board exams. All that happens, all the effort that goes happens to be towards this. And I think the first thing that we must demand, and it is something that we hope to demand, is put out a 5-year vision for what you want to do in your corporation schools, and put it out there so that there can be a community ownership over that direction. Let CSRs come look at that map and say, okay, I want to contribute towards this. Let NGOs come and say that, okay, this is your priority, we have the capacity to support you in this aspect, let us work collectively towards it. The effort that happens is very ad hoc. Somebody wants to come and install one smart classroom, as I mentioned. Somebody wants to install air conditioner. Somebody wants to install something else that really has no sort of in the overall scheme of things a very large or long-term impact. The second is, have stable leadership at the Ripon building. Please have one deputy commissioner or a joint commissioner who will be there long enough to know what needs to be done. It's funny. I will walk in 1 week, 2 weeks later, there'll be somebody else. You start explaining the whole system again to them. 6 months later, there's another person. So without stable leadership, I can see some of you smiling, and hopefully you empathize with us. Without stable leadership, and without that leadership owning that that roadmap, you're just going to be reinventing the wheel over and over again, because any new officer that comes will have a separate priority, right? Will have their own priorities. And when you have that kind of disruption and sort of discontinuity, it's just like we're headless chicken running in different direction. The third is, and this is very specific to the urban space that Chennai is, generally we have parents, both of whom are working, typically as laborers or domestic staff, or in different kind of jobs, and the child does not have a safe space to go to after school. And I say that this is very sort of peculiar to a city like Chennai, because in rural areas you have a very community type setup where either there's a neighbor or there's a party or there's somebody at home that the child can go back to and be safe with, right? In Chennai, the kind of stories you hear about, the stories of abuse that you hear from children that they experience after school, simply because they do not have a safe space to go to, and children can and parents cannot afford after school child support, is heart-wrenching. And I think if we can convert schools into those safe spaces where children can continue, being after school, continue, continue to be in after school, get NGOs to run these after school centers. If the corporation doesn't have the wherewithal to put its own staff there, I think it would really help in the kind of social emotional well-being that our children are so direly in need of. And I think last but not the least, we really need to, like I said, as a society, we need to understand that even if we do not have a big stake in the public education system or public education setup in Chennai, because none of our children go there, none of our friends' children go there, what happens there is going to have a massive impact on the kind of inequity that we as a city are going to face. You're going to create a group of children who will grow into adults who come from a certain quality of education, fighting for jobs with your children, right? It is going to be that kind of a space. And if we do not think of it from that sort of larger societal good lens, the inequality will get to our children, will get to the kind of environment that our children will have to contend with when they become adults. So at least for the very selfish reason that you want to create a stable, equal and thriving city for your own child, even if you're not thinking about somebody else's child, think about public education in the city, and think about how that will help maintain the balance, and help maintain the balance of equality and equity in the city. And I think it's time we look at it as our problem, rather than saying that we have a corporation school and we have to go and volunteer there so that we earn good karma. So I probably was a little brutal, but it really gets to you when you see education and public education being relegated to such a place of absolute unimportance. And I think I'm not taking a stance against whether you should let private schools function or public schools function. uh, Quality education needs to be affordable, ideally free, and in a place like Chennai, that seems to be far from the reality. And I think we need to put our heads together and do something about it.
Yeah, thank you, ma'am. It will be interesting to learn about the legislative interventions that we can do in public education space. Thanks a lot for that. So next, can we have Harsha speak about the challenges they face in their constituency?
Yeah, so I'll actually take off from where Maria said about
Your voice is breaking.
and finding somebody that was brought out by Chennai doesn't have a city remote location. And is this better? Okay.
Yes, it's slightly.
Chennai city doesn't have.
Sir,
Yeah, Chennai city doesn't have a city plan. So, right, with millions of population. Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes. So let's just give him a few seconds to join back. So he'll join in a few seconds. So we'll move on to the next round.
Yeah. So, hi, I will be taking the second round because this is a very interesting topic and we have a lot of questions in this regard. So, can we just start with Jyoti Lakshmi ma'am? Can you all hear me?
Yeah, let's say we can hear you.
Okay, but Harsha is back. So, why don't we finish off the first round and then we can go to the second round?
Sir, are you there? Can you hear us?
You are on mute, sir. Yeah, can you hear me now? You can.
Sir, can you please start?
Bhavani? Yeah, okay. So where I was taking off where Malia said, Vikram Kapoor, once said that Chennai doesn't have a city plan. Right? So that's the fact of the matter. The left hand of the city doesn't talk to the right hand of the city, and that is why we have all what we have. Somebody wants to know when the road is to be dug, when the pipes have to be laid, and then somebody wakes up next morning and says, no, what, that guy did was all wrong, let's do something new. Then you have departments that say that we'll lay the storm, like Prashant was saying, we lay the stormwater drains in a place which doesn't require stormwater drains, where they basically need sewage and we are laying stormwater drains. So, I mean, nobody wants to plan. They just want one project, one set of funds, and that's your karma is done and things like that. So that's actually where FOMRA came in. The reason why we formed the Federation of OMR Resident Associations was that, we had this whole area which was hyped up, tall vertical villages, 20 floors, 25 floors, electronic access, you had passcodes, you had security, you had things that were not seen in a regular city or Mylapore or Alvarpet for that matter. And you had these fancy looking buildings, IT buildings next door. You could walk to work, that kind of setup, which sounded fabulous. But then you come here, even when you're buying a flat, the builder will tell you, oh no, sir, it's a matter of practical connection. That's all. In 2 months, we'll be getting water, and in 3 months, we'll be getting sewage. So these kind of things we've been hearing for 10 years or more. So this is the reality of it, and that is why FOMRA was formed as a federation to collectively represent all these issues, right to the corporation or to the panchayat or to the MLA or to the MP. So when we used to go individually to people and we used to ask them, nothing was working. So we formed the federation, and collectively when we went, at least 25% of the things got acted upon. This other 75, I will say, still we're drawing a blank. We're not able to fix stuff, but some action is happening. Something is happening because we are going collectively and we're asking. This year, this election, what do we want? We want the same thing we've been wanting for 10 years: underground sewage, stormwater drains, piped water. Now, why doesn't Metro Water give us water? Like Karthik was saying, 30 to 40% of the tankers in water in the city is supplied by tankers, either private or by Metro Water themselves in tankers. Give me one logical explanation for this. If Metro Water has the water and they can supply it in tanker, why can't they put it down the pipe? What is so difficult? There is a very simple thing in this. It's pure mathematics and economics. The city, the homes in the city, they get water for practically nothing, right? They pay absolutely no money. Whereas we, in the extended areas like OMR and all these areas, we pay 1,000 rupees for a tanker load, which is around, say, 10,000 rupees. So we are paying this kind of money, even to Metro Water. So Metro Water thinks, oh, these guys can be milked for money. Let's milk them for money and subsidize the city. And subsidize your Semanjeri, your Kannagi Nagar, your all those things where they get water for free. Why is that? Because that's the vote bank. We are not. So the vertical villages are not your vote bank. The horizontal villages are your vote bank. So what will you do? You provide only free water and free sewage, whatever facility you want, only to the horizontal villages. That is where apartment complexes and all that. And basically, FOMRA consists of a bunch of vertical villages, right? We are a federation of all apartment complexes. And we represent the interests of these people. We are all middle class people. We all bought flats here. We all came. But are we treated on par with other middle classes of Chennai? No. If you are in a flat complex, you are a totally different equation. Even the chief minister, in the peak of the drought in Chennai, his comment was that I will supply tanker water to all the houses, but Adikumadi people have to do it themselves. They have to take care of it themselves. Right? So the chief minister doesn't want to consider us. Metro Water doesn't want to consider us. Nobody wants to consider us. But what do? They call the one guy who's bridging the gap between this whole thing, private tanker rates. They call them the mafia. And then they target them. So when you target the mafia called private tankers, who pays the price? We pay the price. Right? So they stop the tankers. Even in the beginning of COVID crisis, they stopped all the water tankers, saying that you are a private money-earning fellow, so you cannot supply water during COVID crisis. Only government can supply water. So we had to talk to our MP, we had to talk to our MLA, we had to engage with the police, go and educate them that the private tanker is actually bridging a gap that the government is not able to fulfill. And we are paying the price for it, so please let them come. So that is how we negotiate. Why we were able to negotiate all that? Because we were able to implement it collectively. We have tried this for 10 years, going individually. Every apartment complex you go, the president, secretary, treasurer will have a file this big. Just that the federation has a file this big. But still, some of those problems are getting solved. This year, what do we want from the new MLA or who takes over? Is we want them to first address the issue of underground sewage, pipe water, and stormwater drains. We want the toll on OMR to be removed. We want proper solid waste management principles. Like Gautam was saying, there is no enforcement of SWM. But one thing we've realized is that it has to come from the heart. And that is what we are doing in FOMRA. We are educating people by example. So we have 10 different apartment complexes who've done solid waste management, composting in 10 different ways. So when somebody comes to us and says, how do we do it? We say, go see the 10 places, whatever works for you, take that example and do it yourself. Because there's no point in listening to the government or asking the corporation how to do it or depending on them or Sumit Urpeza, which is now handling or anything. There's no point in relying on this. We got to do it ourselves. So we are helping that. We build up a knowledge base and that's how we are handling it. We don't see any hope in looking out for enforcement or thing being done properly. Even that every enforcement has a price. 10 rupees today, tomorrow 20 rupees, and enforcement can be bypassed. So we realize that enforcement has to come from the heart, and that is what we are aiming for. How did we connect with our MLAs and MPs? We have done it a couple of times. Not very fruitful. I think we'll discuss that in the next section. Anything else, Bhavani, that I missed?
No, sir. Thank you for elaborating the issues faced in the constituency. So, yes, we'll move to the second round. And yes.
Can you all hear me?
Yes, Lasya, we can hear you.
Yes, okay. So I will be taking the second round where my question is for Jyoti Lakshmi ma'am. So you have spoken about a lot of women issues about women, ma'am. I would like to ask how can we take these issues forward, like legislatively? What legislative interventions can the new government undertake regarding this?
As I said, we are empowered as an individual. So any legislation to empowering women as an institution. There are so many political parties. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am, but not. Maybe you could try switching off your video. It's not perfect.
Am I audible now? Asya, can you hear me?
Yeah. Please go on, ma'am.
As I said, we are empowered individually, comparatively. So any legislation should aim at improving women's status as an institution. We have so many political parties where women are not represented. So as a woman living in an urban area, I don't have a forum where I can probably register my grievance like as we don't have areas about committees that is working in the areas. So the only place where we can go is a police station.
We lost you, ma'am. We can't hear you. Okay, ma'am. While you reconnect, I would like to ask the same question to Professor Raghuram. Sir, can you hear me?
Nasa Jyoti Lakshmi ma'am is back.
Yeah, I just resumed from another location. Can you hear me now?
Yes, ma'am, we can hear you.
So as I was telling, like we are empowered individually, but we need legislation like that can empower women as an institution. We don't see women representing in a political parties, even in the recent, for the number of candidates given tickets, women are not well represented in any party, left, right, or central. This we see as a continuous process. So if we can ensure women's participation as an institution, I think that can greatly improve as a society as a whole also. And so there are so many, promises that has been made in the manifestos of various political parties also. It is again, that is aimed as a very populist policies, vote bank politics that has been seen all throughout the political parties. As a woman, like I would suggest there can be greater space for our voice to be represented.
Yeah, so
and as also we have let's say, like I can see there are enough institutions and there are enough legislation already in place, but where we lack is the implementation part. I don't know where that can come from. It is only when there is a space for participating in these already existing institutions.
okay. So you were saying that it's a lack of enforcement that's also a problem here.
Yes, as also an important example, we have an Nirbhaya fund, right? So how many of the states have properly utilized it? In Tamil Nadu, we have utilized only 20%. Does that mean women feel absolutely safe in our environment? And there are like states like Uttar Pradesh, where 50% of crime against women are registered, but it is using only 12%. So even when the fund is available, the state missionaries and agencies are not utilizing it, means it is not prioritized in their list. So as a citizen, like we have to insist that women's safety should be prioritized, and it should be made as number 1 or 2 in their political manifestos. I'm very surprised to see, even after so many citizens movements and activities, that effort has not been reflected when it comes to an institution.
True, ma'am. Thank you so much for that. We will come back to you. Like we would like you to tell us how that can be addressed. What could be the solution? But that can be in the next round. But before that, can we ask Mr. Professor Raghuraman sir? Can you also tell us what are the legislative interventions that you expect in your domain?
Am I unmuted now?
Yes, sir. Please go on.
So there are legislations already in place. There are orders in place, circulars being given, and the main order is the statement that talks about is nothing about us without us. In the that comes from the UNCRPD, that also being echoed in the 2016 the act enacted by the parliament, and we have the state also complying that. So having said this, there are important ways of taking measures. When I talked about the challenges, there are solutions that could be taken. For example, if you want to have the data first in place, we have already, there's a toll-free number being initiated by the district administration, and as well by the Commissioner's Office of Persons with Disabilities. And as well, we also have this toll-free number from the election office, wherein if I am a person with disability, I am asked to register myself for a special support. So all this data, if the district, Chennai District Corporation could collect and also refine and also ensure that the data is proper and so matched with the district, I think first thing, the schemes will reach out to the person with disability. The second will be, more importantly, that the officials, people in the different departments should be given some sort of an awareness, should be given some sort of a sensitization on handling persons with disabilities, on the schemes that are available for persons with disabilities, because many officials do not
I would
know.
like to intervene here. I would just want to understand how can the new elected government push this?
Okay.
Do you have any suggestions?
Oh, okay. Right. So the elected government, if they could implement the schemes with the allotted percentage for person with disabilities, I think that in itself will help the uh, disabled people in the district to have the access. For example, if I want to access the medical support, if the corporation could ensure that there are supporting medical agencies near to the, when you mark the person with disability in a particular area, you could also mark the medical support for them in the nearby location. That way, corporation could map the person with disability with the support system that is required in that particular area. The third is on the accessibility, access to physical spaces. When you make something, put a road, or you make a pavement, or you create some metro thing, all these things should be audited. A social audit should be done by person with disabilities, so that it is ensured that they have complied with the accessibility features. And also, if there are measures on women's safety, for example, bringing in a grievance cell or a consulting space within the corporation, I think that will help the women with disability to share their views, and also thereby the district administration could support the women with disability on their particular needs. So these are all some measures, but there are many schemes. I mean, as I told you, there are many schemes available already in place. They are not implemented. That is the key here. They are not reached out to the person with disability in every nook and corner.
Okay, sir, that's a valid point. Actually, it's the implementation that's an issue, whether it is about the women's issues or whether it is about the differently able. The implementation of the existing schemes is an issue. So we should look at ways of how the elected government should push for this. We will come to that. But before that, Bhavani has a few questions to the panelists. Over to you, Bhavani.
Yeah. So my question is directed to Malia ma'am. So the pandemic has changed how the public education system works. So can you tell me the impact of COVID on the education system and learning abilities in children in Chennai? What can the new government do? Can you speak about it?
Like I said, I'm not sure how what you mean by the pandemic has changed. You know, the dynamics within the public education system. Could you elaborate on what you mean by that?
Yes, yes. So we have completely shifted to online mode of learning, as a result of which there are also reports of children dropping out of schools because of the social strata. So so can you elaborate on the effect of COVID-19 on the public education system?
Yeah, I think so. When you say public education system, I define it as, you know, the government school system, whereas, you know, for me, private, and, you know, that's how I make the distinction. So to give you a sense, you know, a survey has revealed that even in a heavily urbanized state like Tamil Nadu, with so-called heavy internet penetration and mobile phone penetration, about on an average, 80% of children, especially children who go to government schools in Tamil Nadu, do not have access to a mobile phone. I think we need to just realize what that tells us. It means that 80% of children who go to government schools in Tamil Nadu have had no access to education, or very little access to education, in the last one and a half, I mean 13, 14 months. And this whole buzz around online education is reserved to, again, the very privileged class, right? So in that sense, earlier they were getting bad education, now they got no education. So that's the only difference for the last 14 months, right? So in that sense, I do believe that for the last mile, especially for children who do go to government schools, like I said, it's a very heavily segregated space. It means that if only those who cannot afford to send children to, you know, budget private schools end up sending their children to government schools, which again is the very bottom of the pyramid. For them, I do believe that physical schools are the only option. It is the only option because they will not have access to education otherwise. And it also, you know, gives children access to other measures like midday meals and, you know, interaction with peers, interaction with adults other than their own, you know, immediate family members. So for that, for those things alone, I really hope schools reopen, especially our government schools reopen, and children can go back to school. So in that sense, I do not think that anything massively has changed. Everybody's talking about it, but I think the reality on the ground is very different. Children will go back to school, they will go back to classrooms, schools will resume, and, you know, we will go back to status quo. In that sense, what we are expecting, however, is that you're going to have children coming into schools with massive gaps in academic learning. So while children may have picked up many other skills in these 14 months, I think it's wrong to say that only schools can provide children with learning opportunities. I'm sure they've learned a lot of other life skills in these last 14 months. The academic learning part of it would have definitely suffered, which means that they will be, you know, behind in terms of their reading skill, their comprehension skill, their numeracy skills, and those are very critical skills. I mean, you cannot disregard the fact that, you know, those are important skills. So for that, you need to think about what happens when schools reopen. We are obsessed with completing portions. We are a syllabus obsessed, textbook obsessed society. We do not think about the purpose of what those textbooks are created for. Simply portions mudichingla, and, you know, that's basically a tick mark that happens. Instead of looking at it like that, can we say that for the first 3 or 4 months, or typically the first term of the new year, our singular focus will be to identify these academic learning gaps among children, and put all our energies behind it to bridge it. It could be, by bringing in community volunteers. It could be bringing in other para teachers. It could be, condensing the syllabus to just the most critical sort of learning objectives that children need to know, because remember that children would have been in, say, for example, end of the year, first standard, right? A child would have been, say, at the end of her first standard in 2000, when the lockdown began, and now the child will join third standard. So typically the child has lost out on 1.5 years of learning, and typically it is around the time that they learn to read, they learn to do basic math, they learn to do all these very fundamental foundational things. Without strong foundational learning, children are going to come into classrooms, and we need to obsess over the right things, the right priorities, rather than saying that we have a textbook and we have to start as if nothing has ever happened. So I think bridging that gap is going to be the priority, and I hope we do the right thing when children come back to school. There's also going to be a lot of socio-emotional trauma that a lot of children would have gone through. There would have been displacement, there may have been deaths in the family, there may have been other sort of imbalances and dysfunctions in the family. I think we need to sensitize teachers as much as we can to be sensitive about children and their emotions when they come back. So some focus on their social emotional well-being when they come back is also going to be important. But I think for the first 5 months, let's just put all our energies into going back to status quo, however bad that status quo was, but that is what was the case before all this happened. So I think let's stabilize and then look at the next step on how we can make our public schools better and make it a thriving place for our children.
Thank you so much, ma'am. So next I would like to ask Karthik about the environmental concern. So we have the manifesto of DMK and AIADMK. So Karthik, do you think the two parties have given enough importance to Chennai's environmental concerns? What are the key things that they should focus on?
So I'm talking after a long gap, so yeah. Okay. Regarding the manifesto, the first thing I would like to point out is Tamil Nadu, which is a state which proudly proclaims it to be a social justice state. Parties proudly proclaim themselves to be focused on social justice. I would like to reiterate that environmental justice is as important part in the social justice, overall social justice narrative, and it should be included in the social justice narrative. Periyar Man will include environmental justice as well. So that's the thing I would start with. Regarding the manifesto of DMK and AIADMK, comparatively better than the previous years. The focus on green economy and environmental issues has increased. The sensitization has increased, but is it enough? No. This is a very tough time for human being in general, with climate change narrative coming in, and then the amount of environment degradation that has happened. I don't think we are going in the pace that we would like to go. As Greta says that the house is in fire and we are not acting as if it is in fire. So in terms of demands, so one thing I would like to reiterate before this session itself, we as some of the youth have come together and we made a youth manifesto for Tamil Nadu, which includes a lot of aspects of what we are discussing now. It included a section on disability, on women's rights, on minorities, on urban and rural development, and various other things, and in environment education as well. So I was active part on that. So in that we came up with few things related to environment as well. So I would like to reiterate, or I would like to rephrase that now, some of the demands that came up during that time. One is it's high time that we believe, we agree that climate change is real. It's there for us to say that data is clear, the science is clear, and we are in fact seeing it in front of our eyes. So it's a high time that the government agrees to it, starts planning it, and Tamil Nadu being one state which is very close to the coast is going to be highly affected, especially Chennai. So declaring Tamil Nadu as a climate change induced disaster prone zone or specifically Chennai would be one thing that will be very, very important and critical. So the state has recently released a state disaster management plan that has to be improved and implemented in a better way. So we have to be ready to adapt to frequent climate issues like floods, droughts, and we have to be ready with that. Next would be, and from a policy point of view, we have to start focusing on people's well-being, be it good air, good water, and good food for all to have, and a more egalitarian society that we would talk about. In terms of environmental regulations, as I told you, various reports, we have done various reports and given it to TNPCB, and nothing has happened till now. So there has been overarching environmental justice kind of a policy framework, which includes various principles of maybe doctrine of public trust and various other things, which focuses on commons, and there has been both capacity building and increase in accountability by these environmental regulators, be it TNPCB or local governance or GCC, whomever is, it applies to. There are certain legislative things that I already pointed out, like maybe having a tree act for Tamil Nadu, so for Chennai and Tamil Nadu would be a good thing that we could start off with. In terms of wetlands, there's wetland conservation rules, which has been set up in 2017, and nothing has happened till now in Tamil Nadu. Therefore, they've asked us to form a committee which has not been formed, identify the wetlands of Tamil Nadu and have a plan for it, which has not been done. So with the water being one of the most critical things for human beings, I think it's high time that we start implementing this wetland conservation or wetland rules of 2017. Then when it comes, there's this wide scope for us, especially Tamil Nadu and Chennai, in terms of producing green jobs and green economic development that we talk about. So there's a lot of scope for us to work on that. There's other urban related issues, like we can start promoting public transportation. There is a lot of efforts being put in urban terrace garden things, and other urban based solar panels and other urban based interventions that is possible. So yeah, but there's a wide scope for improvement, and then I think the present manifestos are like going in the right direction, but then there's more to do and a lot more to work. And finally, yeah, all the detrimental projects of which are going to affect the state badly, especially the Adani expansion in North Chennai, the expansion of Adani's port in North Chennai has to be dropped. DMK and allied parties have given a stance. Paneerselvam in his recent election campaign has told that they will ensure it, but then there has not been an official statement from the party and from the AIADMK front. So yeah, this is what I would like to. Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Karthik. Thank you for elaborating how we should take the environmental concerns forward. Yeah.
You're on mute, Bhavani.
We can't hear you, Meenakshi.
Hi.
Meenakshi, we can't hear you.
Can you hear me? So I wanted to address a couple of questions, first to Harsha and then to Prashant. Harsha, you pointed out that these issues that people in OMR have been facing for a long time, you were only able to sort of make some headway by forming FOMRA and sort of finding strength in numbers. So what would you suggest are the ways in which citizens can engage with their incoming government? Like, what are the strategies and interventions that have worked for you? Like, give us some hacks that other people in other parts of Chennai can use to find some kind of success for the various issues that we all face together. So.
OMR is full of IT guys, so hack is the right word, but we haven't been able to hack it. We try very hard, but something is wrong in the basic code. We are not able to change the basic code of the structure of administration, whether it is your MP or MLA or councillor or IAS officer or down to your GCC employee, we are not able to crack that code. We are trying hard. We found better responses in the, when I say, in the IAS officer and below. In that level of interaction, we found a lot of responses. We found a lot of action. Our present MP was helpful in the water crisis a couple of times. When the water tankers went on strike, they were arrested, tankers were seized and stuff like that. So we got some response. But then as an MP, there's very little that they can do, right? So MP-led funds are minimal, they can't use much of it. They have their own agenda about where they want to spend it. So MP can do very little for ground reality, your water, sewage, stuff like that, they can't much. MLA to some extent can do, but then again, they will also throw up their hands if they are not in the ruling party. So if they're not in the ruling party, you are an opposition MLA, what can you do? Just, sir, I tried panne, na sunne, na idu kette, na ada kette, na konja pressure potta. Beyond that, thing happens. I think the real matter is when you get your own council, and that is something which we've been missing. I don't know if it's the right topic or time to talk about it, because we're talking about MLA election. We're not talking about the councillors election. But still, I think the real power would be, like Prashant was mentioning, local bodies, the ward councillors, and the ward committees, right? When we can go and influence our councillor, that's when things will happen. But I'll tell you a very interesting story that happened to me when I initially interacted with my councillor. There was a lot of flooding, water flooding on our street. So we called him, all of us went there, we told him, sir, how much flooding is happening. We used to have nearly 3 feet of water on our road, and we couldn't go for about 10-15 days. So we said, we want you to help us with a stormwater drain. It's just a very small road. It was just a one kilometer road. And they said, for this stretch, it's going to cost pittance to get it done. You can do it from your councillor funds and all that stuff we said. So he came in his white Tata Sumo or whatever, that kind of image he had. And then he came and he saw it. Tambi, enna pannanum sollunga, pannidlam. So me, like a fool, I thought, okay, really there was some genuine interest to solve our problem. So I took level measurements. I saw where the slope was, where the water was coming from, where it could drain, who we had to speak to. We had to cut through some private properties to put some drain. I spoke to them. They agreed. IT companies agreed. They said, we'll foot the bill for the canal through our properties, but you bring the water up to here, then we'll pump it. I mean, everything was hunky-dory. Everything was fine. So I made a big project report, took it to the councillor and said, sir, if the panna next rains, we will not have any water stagnation. So he looked at me and he said, in our building, எத்தனை vote தேரும் in the building here? So we counted, and middle classes, and even if you guys, if we have vote, we don't go and vote. So he looked at me and he said, for 10-15 votes, why should I do this much work? If I go to the opposite side of the road, which is your horizontal village, which is where the old Sholing Allur or your Kanagi Nagar or Semanjari is there, if I do 10% of this vote, I'll get 10,000 votes. Why would I do work for you guys? And that's where the whole thing is. So this has been primarily our interaction with a lot of the political class. So when you go to them, you ask them for something, they will just simply, these days, they straight on the face ask you, if I do this for you, how many votes will you get? I think we don't have an answer. So last year, when the Lok Sabha elections happened at Fomra, we did an event where Prashant was also there asking questions. We called all the candidates from the major parties, made them sit down and grilled them for 15 minutes and asked them what their idea was and what they were going to do for the constituency. We're going to do a similar thing now for the state elections as well. But this is the kind of thing that we need to do, because we need to know and we need to inform them that we are making an informed decision to vote for you. We are not going by the general rhetoric of what you can say, 1,000 rupees to the housewife, or I will give you a mixie, I'll give you a grinder. We are not those kind of people. Right? We need solid facts. What do you want? What are you going to do for us? And things like that. If you look at the manifestos also, the parties, you'll see they're very clearly targeted to the lower and the lower middle classes. There is nothing in it for the middle classes, the educated, infrastructure. There's no talk on any of it. Very, very broad, vague terms. Like I will also say, I get up in the morning, I wish well for the earth. That kind of statements. I mean, there's nothing specific there. There's nothing very good. It doesn't make me feel good when I read those manifestos. So I don't know. I don't want to sound pessimistic. I have hope that we will all go ultimately and make that swing to vote for the right guy. And we have been doing that exercise. We at FOMRA, at least, we have been encouraging people and we have been helping people to find their names in the voting list and telling them, your booth is here, please go vote, and making sure that people vote. And unless we continuously do this and make sure that our votes count, I don't think we can see any change. We need to do this. We need to force ourselves down the throat of the political class and tell them that we count and you have to count us, and that is when we'll see change.
Essentially, fighting for greater voter awareness and also, I think, divorcing electoral math from sort of basic rights that all citizens should get. So in that regard, I think I'd like to turn to Prashant now to talk about how to bring about greater citizen participation in these sort of decisions that are being made. Prashant has done a lot of work on this, and he speaks extensively about what committees and so you can speak about how you think something like that would transform Chennai, because I think this idea hasn't captured the imagination of a lot of people, like enough number of people for them to put their weight behind it. So if you could maybe perhaps elucidate some examples from places like Bangalore and Kerala on how greater civic participation and paving the way for that could transform local governance and urban governance, and why this is something that people should make part of their agenda for the elections and push for parties to enforce the same.
Okay, Aruna. So am I audible? Okay.
Yes.
Right? Okay. So the first thing is, of course, the much needed, greater devolution of powers to the local bodies, which is the area sabhas and ward committees, are very much essential, right? Where people of that constituency decide what is required for themselves. So it forms the the most important aspect of any administration. World over also, greater taxes are levied by the local bodies and local corporations, and much more power is also given to them in some of the key countries. So I think that is the only way to actually get out of all these kinds of problems that we are facing right now. Also, the division of powers, right, wherein the elected representative dictates most of the terms about what needs to be done for that particular area, right? So that itself is a very, very dangerous thing to happen, where even the local administrative bodies, the executives, don't actually take up the work which is supposed to be taken up, or don't implement it for a long time, which is pending for a long time, right? So these are all things which needs to be addressed. As you said, right, in Kerala and all, there is a lot of participation by citizens itself in what they need. So that kind of power, I doubt if it would ever come to Tamil Nadu. To a certain extent, there is to Bangalore, but it's still not very big. As compared to Kerala, right? Bangalore model is still very, very centralized still. It's not very diverse as Kerala model. So I really doubt if we would ever get that, right? There needs to be a government which is so sensitive to all these things, and unless greater people go and start asking these questions, I don't think this will ever come up. So in my agenda, I have 5 points which really matter, right? I just wanted to take a minute to tell this. The Tamil Nadu Citizens Participation Audit Act, right? Social Audit Act. Basically, we were talking about what, is required, but what happens when they're actually implementing it also, right? We don't actually see any kind of monitoring for these government projects or schemes which are being implemented. What is happening to the money? What is happening to the projects? Nobody is knowing about it. There are central bodies like CAG and others who come with a report after 5 years or 10 years. By the time the corruption is happening and the project goes into steam, and probably everything is gone, done and dusted. So there is no point in just reading a report after 5 years after the project is completed, right? So that is a problem. We need live participation by citizens to go and monitor and make sure that these projects are implemented properly. That's number one. Number two, police reforms. Police reforms is a very, very critical factor where, even people who go and ask questions at the government, they are being arrested, they are being silenced. So police need to be removed from the political clutches of the administrators, right? So that is very, very important. So that is number two. The number three is we need an independent Lokayukta wherein corruption related issues can be heard and they can be properly taken care of, right? So corruption is a very key social evil which needs to be addressed. Fourth is right to Citizen Services Act. So basically you can break it up into citizens charter. You can break it up into second level of grievance redressal, and third level of some kind of a services commission, just like right to information, right? You have a information commission like that, services commission, the third level, second level. So basically this will ensure that the services that you seek from the government is being provided to you. So that is something very, very important. And even if you give a water connection request, that needs to be addressed, and make sure that that particular request is addressed at a proper time. And if it doesn't get addressed, then you go and seek redressal from an upper appellate authority in the same department. If that is also not addressed, then you go to the Services Commission, which is headed by an independent judiciary, right? So this is the way it should work. So all these things will go a long way in making sure that the current clan of politicians that Harsha so well explained, right? So we just can't transform the system until the system itself is transformed, right? The system needs to change. For that system to change, you need to get the systems perfected. And these are all some of the key initiatives which I feel, in my opinion, will bring about that change. So that's about it. I don't want to take much of time. Yeah, over to you, Bhavani and Aruna. Thanks. You're on mute, Aruna. Sorry.
Thank you. So thank you for talking about how we have to institutionalize a lot of these reforms so that it's not contingent on which individual sort of holds the reins at that given point of time. So I'd like to ask Bhavani to take over from here.
Yeah, so okay. That marks the end of our panel discussion. Thank you so much, everyone, for taking your time and sharing sharing what the new government should focus on. Thanks a lot once again. So we will also reach out to you individually for exploring stories on all these issues. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having us, Bhavani.
Thank you. Thank you all. Yeah.